Welcome to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me. Before we jump into our conversation, if you would like to support the podcast, please go to convome.com/support. There you can buy me a coffee or 2 or 10. I appreciate all the support you give to the podcast. And now, on to the episode. My guest this week is Aubree Malick of the Freelancer to CEO podcast. Aubree is on a mission to change what it looks like to be a working mom. And she does this in several ways. And that's what we're going to talk about. And we're also going to talk about how that looks like for you as an Etsy seller and what you can do to actually expand what you're doing in your business. Aubree, thank you so much for being my guest and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to chat with your audience today.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you on because we don't always talk too much about Etsy sellers offering services because we're so focused on selling products. And so I'm happy to have you on to have a discussion about that. But before we do, can you tell us a little bit about you and what it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Aubree Malick, and first and foremost, I'm a wife and a boy mom. I've got two little guys at home, and really started my business because of them. I was looking for a way to be able to be the one that was at home raising them. At the time, I was an elementary teacher. And while, of course, some people will say, well, you're a teacher, you get weekends off, you have decent hours, you have summers off. I just wanted more flexibility, and being a little bit of a rebel by nature. Anytime somebody would tell me, like, oh, well, you can't do this, or you have to do it this way, or oh, you can't have that day off because we are doing X, Y, and Z, it just like fueled this fire inside of me of I want to be able to dictate what my life looks like. And I don't want to have anybody telling me what I can and can't do, especially as a mom. I wanted to
Yeah.
be able to decide what that looked like for myself and for my kids. And so, really, out of a necessity for that, started my freelancing business. Had tried a bunch of different things to make money from home to support my family financially. And this was the one thing that actually brought in an income and that I could really see the potential of it growing into something more. And so decided to take my business full time. And when I did that, I was able to replace my teaching income and grow and scale that. And just naturally, from talking about my business, not even thinking that it would turn into this, I had people asking me, well, how did you do that? How did you get started? How did you replace your income? And so I thought, well, maybe this was the path that I was supposed to be on. I'm not a teacher in a classroom teaching second graders anymore, but maybe I'm supposed to teach other moms how to do this too and how to have that freedom and flexibility. So that was the role that I shifted into helping other moms either get started along this path of working from home as a virtual assistant, a freelancer. Those terms kind of mean the same thing, and there's some other terms that we might talk about today too. And then helping them to possibly, if they want to, it's not a necessity by any means, but if they want to step away from their full-time job, to have that more flexible schedule, more freedom, more time with their family, more control over their life, to help them to scale their business there. So that is my journey. That's probably the fastest I've shared about my background. I always try to keep it short and sweet, but I like to talk. So it's not always easy for me to do, but that's how I got to where I am today, and what I do and how I support women in the online space.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Aubree. And I'm glad you did because it helps. You went from a teacher of second graders to teacher of moms. I like that. One of the things that I think about when I think of a VA or a virtual admin is that there's certain tasks that they do, and trying to make the connection between that and selling on Etsy. For me, it looks like I have somebody who's helping me do some administrative tasks like handle emails and things of that nature. But we're coming at this from a different angle when it comes to Etsy sellers. Do you want to share why you think this is a good path for people who typically are focused on selling products?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think no matter what business model you have, whatever you're doing, either, whether you have like a storefront, you have a brick and mortar store, or you have an online storefront, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what you're doing, I think it's really, really important to have different layers and different streams of income, because there's going to be ebbs and flow no matter what type of business model you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to not put all your eggs in one basket, which is actually what, a lot of us traditionally do in the traditional 9 to 5 job. Like a lot of us feel like that has so much security surrounding that.
Yeah.
But at any time, somebody is in control of that destiny for you. Anytime
Mm-hmm.
that job could disappear and you're left with nothing, right? You're starting from ground zero. So I think there's a lot of freedom that comes with having an online business, and if you have an Etsy store. But I also think it's important to recognize that, I can't have total control over everything in my business, but what I can have control over is where I'm putting those eggs in those baskets, so to speak. So I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a really great and easy way. One of the reasons why I really love offering services, no matter what type of business model you currently have, or if you don't have a business at all, is because there's a lot of really great benefits to starting a freelancing business. Number one, it's really low barrier to entry, which means that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to have all this money, or have all these certain qualifications in order to get started. A lot of people that I teach are coming to me, and some of them are stay-at-home moms, and they're like, well, I don't have any previous job experience. You don't have to have this degree, have all this experience. A lot of us have skills already as we are,
Mm-hmm.
which makes, again, what you're doing as Etsy sellers a really great fit, because you probably from the ground up built this Etsy store and had to learn a lot of things along the way. And you've probably figured out some really great ways to do things, or maybe figured out an area that you really excel in, something that you really enjoy doing. And so you can use those skills that you already have to create this other layer of your business, where not only are you selling on your Etsy store and you're creating these products, whether that's digital or physical, but you're also coming in and saying, I know how to do something and I know how to do it really well. And this is a strength of mine. And I can come in and support. And it doesn't have to be in this huge capacity, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want this to be something that takes away if from your Etsy business, but something
Mm-hmm.
that's complementary, that you can come in for a few hours a week and support another business owner. Maybe it's another Etsy seller, or maybe it's a business owner that has a completely different business that you can use your skill set and the strengths that you have to support them. So that's why I think it's a really great fit. And like I said, it's going to add that extra layer to your current business model, so that you can feel, well, if I look back at the past year and I know that there are certain months where maybe business is slow, or maybe people aren't shopping as much, I can have this season where I am
Mm-hmm.
supporting business owners and I'm helping them. And that's kind of combating that. So I don't have to feel the stress of, like, there's things, especially in like shopping, there's cycles. We know that, leading, and also dependent on what type of store that you have. So if you have a store that has a lot of seasonal items or holiday items, that the time
Mm-hmm.
leading up to those holidays, you're going to see a big boom, but then maybe right after that, you might see a little bit of a lull. So knowing that you can bring in this added layer that is not going to take up all of your time, you can get started with just a few clients and working a few extra hours on top of what you're currently doing, and really support during those different cycles of your business.
Okay, that's great. Now, Aubree, what would you say the pathway to starting to freelance looks like, or could look like, for a seller? Let's say I have a skill that I've developed just from selling, and it's a service that I can now offer to people, and to make it more um to help that person who's listening envision this more. Let's talk about product photography, because if you sell a physical product, you're taking pictures of them. You've probably developed skills that help you take really good pictures of products. Say you specialize in, you sell jewelry. Jewelry is notoriously difficult to photograph. So if you've mastered how to do that, perhaps offering a service as a product photographer might be a way to go, freelancing that. So Aubree, what would that path look like to that person who's listening? Does it mean that he or she starts advertising themselves as that? And if so, where does one go to advertise that, hey, this is something I can do for you? Or does it mean that that person starts a new social media channel that just talks about product photography and highlights that skill? Does my question make sense? Like, where does one begin?
Yeah, absolutely. Such a really great question. And there's a couple different ways that I'm going to answer this. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is deciding for you what is that skill or that strength. So say it, you
Mhm.
know that it is product photography. That is an easy thing for you. And sometimes for people, it might be hard for them to recognize it in themselves, like what a strength is, because a lot of times things that are strengths of ours are things that come easy for us. And so
Yeah.
we don't always recognize them as a strength because
Mhm.
we think, well, if it's easy for me, it must be easy for everybody else.
Yeah.
So that would be the first place that I would start if you're listening to this. Maybe you're not like recognizing that, or like the bells and whistles aren't going off in your head right now. Is really think about like what are those strengths of mine? What are things that come natural for me, that come easy for me, that I really enjoy doing? I think that's another really great distinction to make too, is that it's got to be something that you enjoy doing, right? If you're going to go in and help another business owner with this in their business, you want to enjoy doing it, right? Like there
Mhm.
are things that I am good at that are easy for me, but it doesn't mean that I enjoy doing them.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that whatever path you do decide to take, it is something that you enjoy doing, because it's one thing to do it for your business, something that you are trying to grow and build from the ground up, but it's another thing to go into another business owner's business and do this for them. So that is another
Mm.
like thing to think about too. Even if you're really great
That's
at it, like
so true.
do you enjoy doing that? So that's my first place that I would start. Then you're going to want to decide what you want to charge for this. And there's a couple different ways that you can go about doing this. A lot of people start out charging hourly. Some people might throw together a package. So similar to like what a product might have, like what is it that this person is getting for this price? So what are you going to include? What are you going to do for that business owner? And what are you charging for that? And this can, you can throw this together in a lot of different ways. Do I think that you need to have a full website for this? Not necessarily, not when you're first getting started. I am all about how can we make you some income fast and
Mm.
quickly. And so I would throw together a quick PDF and Canva, and just talk about who you are, share about the services that you're going to offer, share some pricing there, or share some package ideas so that people can get a feel for, okay, yes, this seems like a good fit for me. And then share a way that a person can connect with you. How do you want to take that next step with a potential client? For a lot of my women, this is getting on a Zoom call with them. We call this a discovery call, and figuring out, a little bit more about their business and what they're looking to outsource. And also, is it a good fit, right? You want to make sure that the people that you're working with are a good fit on both ends, right?
Yeah.
And then as far as where do I go to advertise this, there are so many different directions that you can take. I think my big tip that I'm going to share right here is that whatever you decide to do, you have to be consistent with it. And
Mhm.
because a lot of your listeners already have this business, they already understand the thought behind being consistent and showing up, right? Like if you put one item in your Etsy store, like there's a good chance like that you'll get a sale here or there. But
Mhm.
if that's all there is and you're not doing anything to drive traffic to that store, what are the chances that that store is going to be successful? So if you're looking to add this additional layer in, you also want to think about, do I have time to market? Am I going to market? If I want to bring new clients in, what am I going to do? One of my favorite ways, and I think this will be really helpful for your listeners too, is I'm sure that you are connected with a lot of people in the online space. And again, the people that you work with could be other Etsy shop owners. They could have a different business. But if
Mhm.
you're somebody who's like, I know Etsy. I know this thing inside and out, and I want to help other people who maybe don't know how to do this. You
Yeah.
are probably connected with a lot of those people, and you can start to just organically talk about what you're doing, that this is something that you love doing, it's a passion of yours, and because that you have this gift and talent for it, you want to help other people as they are growing their business. So I would just reach out to people, or even like when I first got started, I used my personal Facebook page and I made a post on there and I said, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm starting, this is what I can do for businesses. And I just said, like, if you know of anybody who might need this, can you send this along? And I got
Yeah.
my very first client from that, from my own personal network. So I would think about the network of people that you already talk to and just start to share about this and just put it out there. But there's so many different avenues that you can take in the online space. I think there's a lot of correlation with driving traffic to your Etsy shop. And then if you want to do the same thing, right? If you want this part of your business to grow, what am I going to do every day to bring new eyes to what I'm doing, to this
Yeah.
offer that I have? So I would think about that and then just be very consistent with it. If you want that to grow, you have to be willing to talk about it every single day, to share about it. And I think your other question was about another social media page for it. Um,
Yeah.
it might be just because it could get a little bit blurry if you have your, if you say for an Instagram for your Etsy shop,
Hmm.
and then you're adding in this other layer. I think you could probably put it somewhere in your bio that this is something that you offer and link to a separate page. But I think to keep things differentiated, it would be helpful to create an Instagram page that talks about what you do. I know I've seen a lot of people doing this thing on Instagram where it's like a 9 grid. So it's 9 photos.
Hmm.
And basically it's like a mini website, and it basically describes like who you are, what you do, what you offer. So it doesn't have to feel like another thing, right? Like I know it can feel like, well, creating another Instagram page, that feels like another thing to add to my to-do list.
Yeah.
But I think don't not feeling like I have to post all the time, but having a hub where people can learn about what you do and then sharing about that.
Yeah. And Aubree, while you were talking, I was brainstorming to myself, like, for an Etsy seller, where are some good places to go and spread the word? You mentioned Facebook. I think Facebook is always a good place to start, especially if you already have a personal Facebook page where you have a personal network of people who, for the most part, care about you and what you're doing and your well-being. And if you just, like you did, and I've heard other people say that, they just put a post on their Facebook page and people in their circle saw it and doors started to open up. But for Etsy sellers, if you're listening, I just thought of something else. We have, and Aubree, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Etsy, but we have this thing in the Etsy community called Etsy Teams. And they are like affinity groups within Etsy of Etsy sellers. So there might be a group of sellers in San Francisco, a group of sellers in Seattle, and because they're similar based on geography, they form an Etsy team, and then they get to connect with themselves. Then there are groups of people who make pottery, groups for people who make fine jewelry, groups of people who make ceramic jewelry. Like, there's so many different Etsy teams. And I'm thinking that as a seller, if you're listening to this and the wheels are starting to turn and you're thinking, yes, there is something that I've learned to do and do so well that, and I enjoy it, and I can think of how I can do it for another seller or other people within, let's say, start in the Etsy community. Etsy teams are a place to go. And even if it's not a service that you're offering to other sellers know other people in their real lives that might need what it is you're offering. So teams are also, don't overlook Etsy teams when you start to think about how to spread the word about what you're doing.
I love that. It's such a good point. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And even too, like something I was thinking about is like local businesses to you. Maybe you have a local business that would want to go online, or maybe they want to bring some of their stuff into the e-commerce space. Like you have a lot of skills to be able to help them too. So, it can start with SE if that's a comfort zone for you, but also think outside the box and start to think, okay, how can I apply these skills to other types of business owners and even somewhere local to me? I have a student in one of my programs who she has a really thriving downtown local area with a lot of small businesses. And she's like, I really want to support them. Like a lot of these businesses don't even have a social media presence. Like,
Mm.
they're used to their traditional ways of advertising and marketing. Like I want to help them refresh some of that. So you can always think outside the box too, but
Yeah.
starting with your personal connections, or starting in a place where you already have people. And I love what you said about, it's not necessarily about who you know or who you're connected with, but who that person could be connected with. And
Mhm.
that's like a networking 101. I think even like in corporate spaces, right? You go to these networking events and you want to build as many relationships with people as you can, not because maybe the person that you build a relationship with is going to eventually hire you or want to work with you, but
Mhm.
because of the relationships that they might have on the back end of that and who they're going to be able to point you to and connect you to. And then that's really how I built my business too, is I started work. It's not like I knew all these people. I know some people are like, I don't know people, or my area is small. Like I
Yeah.
just started working with a couple people. And from there, I was able to build my business on referrals because I got my clients really great results. And
Yeah.
then either they would refer me just because they love the work that I was doing, or I would say, hey, I'm looking to fill one or two more spots this month. If you have any friends that might need this service, like I would so appreciate a referral. And like I would even, like, if somebody sent me a referral, I'd buy them a coffee, I'd send them a gift card. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this that don't have to feel overwhelming and can be as simple as starting with that personal network of yours.
Yes. And for that person who does feel overwhelmed, I know there are two, well, there are more than two types of people who approach doing something new. There's the person who says, okay, I'm going to figure it out. I'm just going to jump in and I'm just going to start figuring things out. And when I get that first, I'll start talking about what I'm doing. When my first client shows up, I'll figure out invoicing. I'll figure out, how to structure my, new service, this new addition to my business, etc. But then there are other people who say, I want to do this, but I don't want that learning curve. I don't want the trial and error. I want a proven path, or I want somebody to show me, okay, what do I need to have in place to really, be successful at this, to make sure, all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed. And you do that because you have different offerings that you can help people to get started and get set up. Can we talk about what you offer people to help get them on this path, and how they can work with you to accomplish that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you talked about the two different paths, because that's literally like you took the words right out of my mouth. That's usually what I tell people when people are like, "How do I get started?" I'm like, there's usually two paths people take. You either take the path where you're going to DIY this, you're going to
Yeah.
figure it out, you're going to do the research, which is great. And I think that there are many points and times in our life and in business when having that mentality and that mindset is really, really great and it serves us
Mm-hmm.
well. But
Mm-hmm.
then there's also the flip side of the coin, like you said, of people who are like, I don't even know where to begin, or this sounds really great, Aubree, and I would love to get this started as soon as possible. But I don't want to spend all that time researching it. So you have to first decide like which side of the coin that you're on. And I tell people there's no right or wrong,
Yeah.
right? Like, there are plenty of things in my business where I have said like, nope, I'm figuring this out because I have the skills and the resources and like I know I can do that. And then there's other things in my business where I'm like, I do not want the headache. I'm going to invest in something or buy something that's going to save me time,
Yeah.
so that I can get this done faster. So first figuring out where you're at. And then if you are on the path of, I want somebody to simplify this for me. I want somebody to like wrap all these steps up in a nice, pretty package and put a bow on top for me so that I just have to take that and absorb it. I would definitely encourage you first and foremost to check out my free training. It's a free class, and we're going to talk about some of the stuff we shared here, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth on some of the topics. And like I said, it's completely free. You can find that at aubreemalick.com/free training, all one word.
Okay.
And then I also have a quick start program that we actually just relaunched. I'm really excited about this. We took it off the market because we wanted to do some revamping and just restructuring to it and make sure that it all made sense for people who were really looking to get started. They were super motivated, but they knew like, hey, I know I need guidance for this and I don't want to have to listen to all the podcasts or read all the blog posts. And we're calling that our 30-day VA bootcamp. And basically it's going to give you my 5-step proven quick step framework to getting your business off the ground in 30 days or less. So this is really great for, especially I think for your audience that they already have some background, they're already in the online space, they kind of know how things work, but this might be a little bit of a different path for them. So it's going to break that down into 5 easy steps for them, give them everything they need, give them some templates and tutorials that again is going to save them time to start their business. So that link is aubreemalick.com/VA bootcamp. And I'll send all those links over to you so that you can put them in the show notes for people who are like, wait, what was that? Can you tell me that again?
Yes,
I know I listen to podcasts in the car and sometimes I'm like, wait, I didn't catch that, or I can't type it in at that moment too.
Yep, me too. And just to be clear, the VA bootcamp it's service agnostic in that one can be offering any type of service and the boot camp will work for them.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to help you to identify those skills. So if you're somebody who's like, I don't know, it's going to help you to identify those skills. And it's a very broad in the sense of like, I'm not going to necessarily teach you like how to become a designer or how to become a product photographer. It's just giving you those foundations so that you can take the skills and the strengths that you have and package that up and then start selling it.
Okay, great. Aubree, you've walked this road before and you were successful at it. You mentioned that I think you mentioned this, but I know this about you, that when you took the leap of faith within a couple of months, and by a couple, I do mean the 2 months, you were able to replace your teaching income. I know that's not everybody's path, and that's not always going to work for everyone, but along the way, I'm sure that there were some obstacles. For that person listening who is now at the point of contemplating offering a service, what obstacles or roadblocks can you think of that are good for him or her to anticipate maybe facing along the way?
Yeah, such a great question. I could go in a lot of different directions here, but I think the first thing that I will say is anytime that you are starting something new, trying something new, you're going to feel some resistance. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And you can either let that drown you or you can let it excite you. And a lot of times when I'm starting something new, I'm really excited about it. Of course, there's some doubts and some worries and some fears, but the first time, like I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast episode and you're like, wow, this sounds really great, like you're feeling excited. You're not really letting your mind go to all those places of like, well, what if this doesn't work out? And what if I fail? And what if everybody laughs at me? So I use a lot of that excited energy to build momentum for me, because what keeps people stuck and what keeps people like holds people back is they don't get enough momentum in the beginning, and then all those fears and those doubts start to like continue to push them back. If you build up enough momentum in the beginning, you're able to navigate some of those fears and those worries a little bit easier because you're starting to build confidence in yourself, right? Like the first time you talk about your business, like, oh, I did that. Like, it's kind of like a badge of honor. Like you're adding these badges to yourself of like, I did that. And you're building that confidence. And so that's what I usually encourage people to do anytime that they're feeling some resistance around something, is like start to build momentum, start to take small steps every single day so that you can start to work on that muscle and build that muscle, so that as those fears, as those doubts, as those worries come through, you're not going to be as easily swayed. And I think the only way that this, in any part of business that you have, no matter, the only way that this can be a true failure is if you don't get started or you completely give up. So if you are going through a process of learning something new and starting a new business and starting this new adventure, you are learning lessons along the way. Sure, like, is everything going to go perfectly? Probably not. Are you going to hit all your goals like the first time you set them? Probably not. But as you go through that process, you are learning, you are bettering yourself. So don't see those obstacles as failures. See them as learning experiences and ways that you can improve and get better. And that will just help you to continue to move through those easier and not get knocked down by them.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, Aubree. That's encouraging, and it's always nice to have that realistic perspective that things might not always start off or go according to plan, but like you said earlier, just staying consistent will eventually produce results. And your path might look completely different from the next person's, but it all goes into creating your business the way it will work for you.
Yes, 100%.
I always like to ask people, and this doesn't necessarily have to have anything to do with Etsy, but are there any particular tools or resources that as a business owner you find particularly helpful that you think would also be helpful to anyone who's listening?
Yeah, I think one of the things that there's two things that I fought off for so long just because, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm a little bit of a rebel. So when people were saying use this and do this, I was like, no,
No.
I'm going to do it my
Yeah.
way. But two things that have been so helpful for me in my business. Number one is my Google Calendar. I put that off for so long because I was such a pen and paper planner type person. And ever since I started implementing that in my business over the past year, it has made my life so much easier
Yeah.
because not only is it again, if it's not on your schedule, it's not happening. Let's just
Yes.
be realistic. But it's helpful for communication, like across my team, people that I have supporting me. For my husband, I will share my calendar with him for the week so that he knows, like, hey, this is when Aubree's going to be on a call and I have to go pick up the boys from school, or I have to
Mhm.
do this. So that is a tool that I live and die by now. And I never thought I would say that. I thought I was always going to be a pen and paper planner, but it's so, so helpful to have that in a digital format
Yeah.
and a great reminder. And then another thing that I think will be really helpful, no matter what type of business you have, is to have some type of tool that helps you to manage your projects and your tasks. Again, I thought I was always going to be pen and paper type person, but ever since I started using a digital tool to help me keep track of what I'm working on and to keep track of projects and to be able to, if there's a similar project that we're going to work on in the next month, instead of recreating the wheel, just like duplicating that over and having that in a tool. We use ClickUp in my business, but
Mhm.
there's so many tools that you can use to help manage projects, even for Etsy sellers. Like if you are creating a digital product, like there's probably a step-by-step process of everything that needs to get done in order for that product to go live.
Mhm.
So being able to create a project that says, here are the things that I need to do, here are the things that need to get checked off, number one, that way you're not missing anything. But again, that's super organized. And say that you're at a point in your business where you're like, hey, I'm overwhelmed and I need support in my business, I need to hire somebody. Now it's so much easier for somebody to come in and help you in your business because you can say, okay, here's what needs to get done, here are the things that you need to do, here's what I'm working on, and it's all organized. So some kind of tool that's going to manage your life, your
Mhm.
projects, your
Mhm.
business. Those are the two things that I would say are a must have for any business owner.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Aubree. My calendar, oh my goodness, now having a digital calendar, and like you, I use Google Calendar. It 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 saves the day sometimes.
If I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, it's so invaluable, and I kind of fell into it because I had a custom Google domain, and so things were automatically going there, and I realized just how helpful it was when I lost the integration to, I have an iPhone, so I integrate them both. And when the integration broke one time, I was like, wait, what do I do? Like my life just felt so out there, like floundering. So yeah, the calendar is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I live and die by that now. And it's so nice because, like I'll have even my sister being like, "Hey, like do you have anything going on this date?" And I literally will go to my calendar, I will
Yes.
screenshot it to her and send it to her, and I'm like, "Yes, this is what because I can't keep all those things straight. I don't know."
Yeah.
And it's helpful just to be able to see it at a glance, just for you to prepare to. And then it's going to help you to know, like, okay, here are, like, I am definitely a person of, like, I like to put those non-negotiable things on my calendar first, and then like
Yeah.
work the rest of my life around that. So like even things on my calendar is like kids schedules, like things
Mhm.
that we're going to go to, things that I don't want to miss.
Yeah.
um
Doctor's
it's help.
appointments, things like
Yeah,
that. Yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, if you have a Gmail account, you get a Google Calendar. And I'm sure Google Calendars integrate with Android phones. They integrate with Apple iPhones. So I'm pretty sure they'll integrate with Android as well.
Yes.
Aubree, thank you so much for giving us a pathway. First of all, something to think about in just the idea of offering services based on the skills that we've garnered as Etsy sellers, and then a pathway to follow potentially to make this actually happen. And once again, just for anyone who's like antsy and hasn't yet gotten to check the show notes for this episode, the links are for the free training, aubreemalick.com/free training, and for the 30-day VA bootcamp, aubreemalick.com/VA bootcamp. But I will have the links in the show notes for this episode, so you can go to convo.me.com and everything will be right there as well. Aubree, did I get those links correct?
Yep, you did. And I'm super excited for everybody to check those things out. And of course, come connect with me on any of the social platforms that you're on. I love hearing from people coming over from podcast episodes, and anything that just stood out to you, or if you have a question on something, don't feel like you can't send me a message. I love connecting with people too. So I'm happy to do that as well.
And you almost, I was like, Aubree, you read my mind. How can people find you on social media? What are your handles? What's your platform of preference, etc.?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy across any platform. My website is aubreemalick.com. I'm at Aubree Malick on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok. I never thought I would ever say that, but I am, and I love hanging out there. And it's my name too, at Aubree Malick. So pretty much Aubree Malick, wherever you want to find me. I do have a podcast too. It's called Freelancer to CEO. That's on all the podcast streaming platforms. If any of this conversation is interest of you and you're like, well, I don't know if I'm ready to take the plunge just yet, but I want to learn a little bit more about that, come check out the podcast. That's another really great place for you to hang out and learn more and kind of dip your toes in that and see if this is a good fit for you.
I agree. Yes, Aubree's podcast is very informative, and if you just want to learn, like she said, just pick up some tips and get a better idea of what it looks like to run a freelancing business. Have a listen to her podcast. I will link to that as well. Aubree, thank you so much for taking time out to be my guest and come and chat with us chat with me on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
You are most welcome. And I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you enjoy conversations like this and you would like to hear more, please do consider supporting the podcast. Go to convome.com/support. And I will be back with another episode next time.